Good morning, everyone, and happy King Day to you. This is a day when we celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. And on such occasion as this, because of recent events that have occurred around the country, and especially on airplanes and in Washington, D.C., I think it appropriate to quote Dr. King, one of his most profound quotes, one that will be forever with us. He reminded us many years ago that we must learn to live together as brothers, and I would add, and sisters, or we will perish together as fools. I would say to us that we cannot allow our differences to destroy us. We cannot allow our differences to destroy us. This is why I and many of my colleagues, 13 of my colleagues, have sent a letter to the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, to the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and the Department of Transportation. My 13 colleagues bear mentioning because this is an important letter, but for them, the letter might not be moving as quickly as it's moving. The Honorable Andre Carson, all of these are honorable, Steve Cohen, Dwight Evans, Alcee Hastings, Johanna Hayes, Hank Johnson, Eleanor Holmes Norton, Donald M. Payne Jr., Albreo Sears, Haley M. Stevens, Benny G. Thompson, Nydia M. Velasquez, and I would add that Chairman Thompson is the chairperson of Homeland Security. We have sent a letter asking the agencies to require at the time of boarding at the airport that the penalty for creating a disturbance in flight is something that will be adhered to, and it's something that they should be aware of. We believe that being aware of this penalty will cause persons to consider their actions before creating a disturbance. The penalty for an in-flight disturbance is a fine of up to $35,000, up to $35,000, and possible prison time. Fine of up to $35,000 and possible prison time. It's important for me to note this because I was on a flight where there was some concern raised, and many others have been on flights where concern has been raised. Our desire is to make people aware of what can be done by way of a penalty in hopes that this will deter people from misbehaving, creating a disruption at 35,000 feet, 500 miles per hour. In one sense, creating a disturbance at this level of life, 35,000 feet, 500 miles per hour, is more serious than screaming fire in a theater, because at that level, you don't have an immediate safe exit. We're all locked in it together. We do not want a disturbance that can have an adverse impact on the aircraft to be created at 35,000 feet, 500 miles per hour. Disturbances at that level are absolutely adverse to the best interests of everybody on the plane, not just one or two people. So this is our desire, to send a clear and concise message to everyone that when you board a plane, please know that creating a disturbance can cause you to be fined up to $35,000 and possible prison time as well. This message means something to us because, as Dr. King put it, at that level, I would say, we have to live together as brothers and sisters, or we will perish together as fools. And I would add, we cannot allow our differences to destroy us. And these are the differences that can make a difference when we are in an airplane in a confined area. So we've asked that people would please adhere to what we've said. The final part of my message is this. On this day, when we honor Dr. King, a person that I consider the prince of peaceful protest, the prince of peaceful nonviolent protest, I would share this with you, dear friends. You don't go to a peaceful protest armed with long guns. You don't go to a peaceful protest where you're going to be nonviolent with shields and swords and all sorts of armaments prepared to do battle. You don't go to a peaceful protest prepared to fight. I believe that if we truly want to understand what peaceful protestation can do, we but only have to look at what happened on Bloody Sunday when they crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, being led by the Honorable John Lewis, God bless him, may he rest in peace. They did not resist, they did not fight. It takes courage to engage in this level of peaceful, nonviolent protest. Because they didn't resist and they didn't fight, they exposed the system and the constabulary for what it was in trying to prevent them from doing something that was lawful and peaceful. That's what peaceful protest is all about. If not but for John Lewis and those who were willing to suffer some of the indignities that were imposed upon them and their physicality, I might not be standing here today. So I encourage anyone who wants to engage in peaceful protest, please, do not go armed with long guns. Please, do not go there prepared to fight. Please, go there with the ideal and idea of wanting to make sure that a message is received about some injustice that is perceived. This is the way Dr. King did it, and this is what I would admonish us to adhere to on this day when we honor his life and his legacy, the prince of peaceful, nonviolent protest. I will yield for questions.
First of all, can you explain, just so we kind of get the idea of what happened on the airplane on the way home that night?
I took a flight from Washington, D.C. that necessitated a stop in Nashville, Tennessee. When I arrived at the airport, there were many persons who identified themselves openly and notoriously as they spoke to each other and talked quite loudly in some circumstances as supporters of President Trump. When we boarded the plane, shortly after we were on, a person identified me as Mr. Impeachment. I consider it a badge of honor, to be quite honest, that such has been said. My initial response was to rebuff it, but I am not in any way regretful of having filed these various resolutions to impeach the president, 4 of them, in fact. While I was on that plane, there were people behind me who were texting or emailing or passing my identity around on their various phones. And I had my head exposed, and it did cause me some degree of consternation, having my head exposed and not being able to look back. And I heard someone behind me whisper, something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. While we were in flight, persons did not wear their mask, some of them, and there were other comments that were made. And when we landed, I went up to the crew area, and I asked that someone be available to escort me and assist me to get to the next gate. A young man came to do this, and as persons were going by, persons were telling me that I was a traitor. That was said while we were on the plane in flight. Someone said traitor too, I believe. But I know that it was said to me as persons went by. And when I got into the airport, this young man, as others were coming out after us, understanding that they were coming toward us and they were making comments, he took me into a room where he could shield me from the persons who were coming and making comments about my being a traitor. And while we were there, he decided that to protect us and everyone else, I suppose, he would get some police protection. So he had 2 police officers come over to escort me to the gate. Those police officers literally had to escort me, if I had gone from one gate to the other, probably less than 100 feet. But it took those 2 police officers to maintain what I believe to be an environment that was wholesome and healthy for my moving from one gate to another. I boarded the plane, and while on the plane and after we landed in Houston, There were persons who were starting to make some additional comments. I remember the flight attendant turning toward the captain to say to the captain that there's something going on out here. And fortunately, there were Houston police officers to escort me from that plane to my transportation. But while all of this happened, we cannot allow me to be the focus of this, because it's the public, the flying public, that we have to concern ourselves with, and people who don't have the resources that I have. I was able to have police to escort me that 100 feet, 2 of them, to the next gate. I was able to have police to escort me out of the airport to my transportation. But let's assume that there was a young man on that plane with a Barack Obama t-shirt, picture in full display of President Obama. He wouldn't have the resources that I had. What would have happened to him? This is bigger than any one person. This is about the public in the United States of America. This is about how we must behave when we're at 35,000 feet at 500 miles per hour. This is what Dr. King reminded us of, living together as brothers and sisters or perishing together as fools. We cannot allow our differences to destroy us. Starting with that flight and all future flights, we want to make sure that people are aware of the penalty associated with creating a disturbance, a disruption at 35,000 feet, 500 miles per hour, or while a plane is in flight. It doesn't have to be at that height. It doesn't have to be at that speed. But we want people to know that there is a severe penalty and a price to be paid. But I would hope that people would understand that it's bigger than this on King's Day. And it's that we've got to, if we're going to have protest, you can't come to a protest armed with long guns. You can't come to a protest armed with weapons to defend yourself. You've got to come to a protest prepared to, in the name of the Prince of Peaceful Nonviolent Protest, make your message known. You can be disruptive, but not come to harm and to fight. If you came to fight, you're not coming for the right purposes. You've got to come prepared to be peaceful and to march and protest such that we can get messages across without people being hurt and property being destroyed.
It had to be a little terrifying to be, because you're so stuck, right? When you're on an airplane like that, there's not like you can, hey, just let me get off the bus kind of thing. Especially after the day that you had earlier with everything going on at the Capitol.
It was a sad day at the Capitol. I literally, when given the opportunity to talk of this on the floor of the House, I had tears to well in my eyes because of the sadness that I experienced and the sadness associated with this occasion. This was a day when we were supposed to have the peaceful transfer of power, and yet we had persons who were encouraged to come to the Capitol by the chief executive officer of the country, the president, and to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. From my office with my staff, we could see persons climbing up the walls. We could see persons pushing in the doors. We could see disruption that we never thought we'd see as it relates to the peaceful transfer of power. So yes, it was a difficult day. It was a very sad day. And when we got to the airport to see the people celebrating the occasion, as though something magnificent had happened, as though this was a seminal moment that they would be proud of for the rest of their lives, not knowing that posterity will judge them harshly. So we got on the plane. And when we got on that plane and all of this was taking place and I was identified as Mr. Impeachment, and I heard persons saying something is going to happen, yes, you feel vulnerable. You have to feel vulnerable. You're confined to a seat on that plane. You can't run up and down the aisle of that plane. The exit doors are not friendly. It's quite hostile to try to exit on a plane in flight, and I need not become graphic about the consequences. But the point is, you are confined to a very small area. The defense necessary to squash, if you will, some sort of disturbance. It's a very unfortunate circumstance to be in. As a matter of fact, without announcing her name, I have had a person to write me a letter who was on that plane with me, who said, that person said, that person, note that I'm not giving any gender, I'm not going to give any identifiers. I've talked to the person. That person said that person was in fear of life. This person was on the plane. This was not someone associated with me. I never met the person, but the person took the time to send me the letter. I have spoken to her with staff on the phone, and we agreed that we would not expose who the person is. There is still concern about being associated with these kinds of disturbances and trying to take them on. People have many concerns. People are living in fear on this great day in the life of our country. They're living in fear because many of them understand that it has been prognosticated that what happened in Washington, D.C. could happen to any capital in one of our states. We are trying to now arm ourselves around the various capitals, put up barriers so that we can keep people from encroaching upon the capitals, breaching security lines. This is not the America that we want to live in. When I was at Washington, D.C. last, before going to the airport on my last visit, I went back to my office, and I had to go to 3 checkpoints before I found the 4th one to get in. A perimeter with fencing up to 8 feet high, it seems to me. And when I did go through that perimeter, there was a tactical vehicle that blocked the road such that you had to meander around it and then make a turn and then go straight. After having been checked by one officer, you get to the end of that checkpoint, you're checked again, and then you had to cross another road wherein there were officers to check you again. This is not the America we want to live in. This is the America that I saw when I was in Baghdad. This is the America that I've seen when I've been in distant places where liberty and justice for all is nothing more than an idea. In this America, we want to know that we can have a peaceful transfer of power and nobody will shed any blood. Blood was shed as we were trying to transfer power in this country. And I have spoken many a times about how proud I am to live in a country where we have a peaceful transfer of power and not a bullet is fired. No one is hurt. I still love my country, as evidenced by the fact that I try to show it and display it when I have events like this and at other occasions. I want people to know I love my country. I respect this flag. I salute this flag. I will stand up for this flag. But my friends, Dr. King was right. We must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we will perish together as fools. And I would add, we cannot allow our differences to destroy us.
Will you be at the inauguration?
I will be at the inauguration. I hope that it will be displayed publicly, meaning we will be out in the open air as we normally have it. I will be there. We cannot allow those who would be a part of an insurrection to send a message such that we would cower, such that we would not perform the functions of office as we ordinarily would. Yes, we have to be safe. We have to do it in a way that provides safety and comfort for the public at large. But what we cannot do is fail to do what we have traditionally done. That has to be done. I have to be there. I will be there. And I will gladly say on that occasion that I was proud to be in the audience when the transfer of power takes place when one person who is now a nominee raises his hand, takes an oath, and when he lowers his hand, will become the next president of the United States of America. And we'll also see the very first female to become vice president of the United States of America. Nothing will stop me from attending this occasion. I will be there. And if I'm not there because of some unfortunate circumstance, I want you to know that my spirit will be there. I will be there in physicality or in spirituality. I will be there.
Is there anything else?
Just to thank the press. I want to thank the press because sometimes when you're part of the avant-garde, you're not looked upon favorably. I thank Mr. Steny Hoyer for the words, his very kind words on the floor of the House of Representatives. I will never be able to thank him enough because many times you're not looked upon favorably when you're a part of the avant-garde, when you're out front. I want to thank the Houston Chronicle for an editorial that acknowledged that this was something that was done. So I thank the press for allowing us to continue to get a message to the masses. I have no desire to create any disturbance. I have no desire to push people to do things that Dr. King would not have them do. So I'm grateful to the press for allowing us to continue to get a message to the masses that can make a difference. This is what I owe the people who sent me to Congress. This is what I owe the people of this country, because after all, I'm a United States congressman, and that means that when I vote for everybody in the United States of America. God bless you and thank you.
Thank you very much.